Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about Keynesian economics and how our economy has been heavily influenced by some dude 100 years ago. So the Keynesian economics comes from the guy named John Maynard Keynes. He suggested that total demand actually matters in the economy. So the aggregate demand is what that's called. That's the demand from all different sources of the economy. He also argued that governments should provide basically support for demand management. And he also said that governments should intervene if inflation rises too much. He also said that lower wages does not boost jobs. Some of this we can kind of see today, right? Well, savings are, I don't know if they would, I haven't researched it if they have exceeded investment levels or not. We do know that savings are at their lowest point in recent history, right? I think it dropped to a savings rate of 5.4%. Let me check that. Looks like the Bureau of Economic Analysis is saying that in May, savings rate was 5.4%, which is actually really interesting because during 2021, I want to say, or during the pandemic, it was around 8%. So we've seen a decline in the savings rate by 3%, which is very unusual. That's not very Keynesian of the economy, right? But one thing that we have seen is that aggregate demand matters because we have we don't have a huge demand. Everyone thought demand was going to be super high. All these retail stores bought a bunch of goods, and now no one really wants to buy them, and they're all on sale, as we can see. In a lot of states, even food's on sale. Right? In California, I live in San Diego, and we don't really see these price cuts in the grocery aisles, but in Target and on Amazon, we do see price cuts. So yeah, aggregate demand does matter because the more demand you have and the lower supply you have, the higher the prices are going to be. In this case, we're seeing a mixed bag across the United States. Most states are seeing a decline in prices for food and general goods. Governments should also provide counter demand management. You can think of that like the government could intervene, right? If inflation rises, if supply levels drop. So, in the terms of demand, what can the federal government do? Well, the federal government can provide jobs. They can stimulate the economy by investing in projects, in public works projects. This is the public sector. So John Keynes basically said that, hey, if you, the government, put more money into like the public sector, if you actually invest in the public, you can stimulate the economy, right? And we saw that actually in the Great Depression. We actually saw FDR, he had a bunch of projects to build a bunch of dams and other public works that tried to stimulate the economy. It gave people jobs, construction jobs, a lot of construction jobs. It gave people work to do. And so did it really work? It took a while to get out of the Great Depression, but eventually it supported us getting out of that long recession that we saw. And so part of the other thing that Keynes said, the government should intervene if inflation rises too much. Well, that's kind of what they're doing right now, sort of. It's really the Federal Reserve who's stepping in, which is not the government. The Federal Reserve is separate from the government, and they're raising interest rates. And interest rates are supposed to combat inflation. But the government isn't doing anything about inflation itself. It's just telling another entity to intervene. So we're not really seeing the government intervene too much right now. So those are kind of Keynes' arguments. But what is his theory behind the economics that kind of precedes him in life, the Keynesian economics? Well, the theory is that when one person spends money, it goes towards another person's wage or earnings. It could be stock earnings, or it could be someone just their wage, right? And when that person spends their earnings, it's supporting another person. So it follows a trail of money that goes from person to person, right? And so his contribution was that individuals are more likely to hold liquid assets, right? You would want to hold liquid assets. So a house would not be a liquid asset, for example, right? Liquid assets would be like US treasuries, it could be cash, it could be anything that sells relatively quickly. Maybe homes might count. I mean, homes sell like within a year, but things, preferably things that sell faster than that. Remember when we talked about how the government he believed that the government should step in to help with public works projects? Well, he would call that priming the pump. So he argued that the government should step in to increase spending by either increasing the money supply or by buying things on the market itself. Now, the government doesn't do this itself. We haven't seen the government actually do this, at least in recent times. We've been seeing the Federal Reserve do this. The Federal Reserve has been buying assets, typically mortgage-backed securities, for the past, 14 years, right? But the main part about Keynesian economics is that it advocates for the public sector to step in to assist when there's a downturn in the economy. Back in the day, when people really believed in laissez-faire capitalism, they thought that there was a separation between the capitalist market, or I guess, you could call it the stock market or the economy, and the federal government. Keynesian really brought out the idea that the government should step in. Partly why we haven't seen any intervention from the government is because President Biden is trying to pass his infrastructure bill, right? And that hasn't gone through yet because the Senate will not pass it. And because the Senate can't pass it, we're not seeing that reform that President Biden's trying to push for. You could argue that it would help the economy, but this infrastructure project, there are some things in it that, aren't really earmarked for specific consumer spending or specific government spending. Some of the things like the charge ports for America, I think is what it's called. Those charge ports aren't really high quality charge ports, but they still kind of help in the grand scheme of things of trying to go fully electric for all vehicles by 2035. So what other theories are there besides Keynesian economics? Well, there's the classical economics, right? They're called the classical, and they really are classical because, it's traditional laissez-faire economics. Just let the economy do its thing, boost business growth to increase the economy. That the government should play a limited role in how the economy works, right? So what are the things that people don't like about Keynesian economics? Well, it's that, for supply side economists, increasing demand from the government increasing demand would arguably not improve economic growth as much as increasing business growth. If you think about it, if businesses were given more ability to grow and less restrictions, they would be able to innovate at a faster rate with less roadblocks than the government telling them how to run their businesses, or the government limiting their progress by putting roadblocks or putting restrictions. Some of these restrictions are very important. Like there are EPA policies that prevent certain businesses from just dumping chemicals down a river, right? But there are things that are very unusual, like, you have to put this fire exit sign 3 inches from a door, 5 inches from the ceiling. There are very strange laws like that can fine businesses and inhibit their ability to reinvest in themselves to make their lives, improve their livelihood, right? Because most businesses are small businesses, actually. I think about 60% of all businesses in America are actually small businesses. So there's also other economists like Milton Friedman, who believed that the Great Depression was caused by high interest rates, because these interest rates would inhibit demand, right? If you have high interest rates like we're seeing right now, lots of people aren't even buying homes, they're canceling deals. About 15% of home deals at the moment are being canceled because of the, interest rates rising and people's budgets just getting crushed by inflation. And so being able to expand the money supply, aka lowering interest rates, that's going to help end recessions and boost growth. And then other people who are against Keynesianism would be socialists and communists, because they don't go far enough. Basically, they don't actually take the Keynesian economics doesn't take it far enough for those groups of people, because they believe that the government should have a heavily involved role in the economy. For communists, it's the whole economy, right? And for socialists, it's around a high percentage, 70 to 90% of the economy should be dictated by the government, like the policies and things of that nature. So why is it important to understand Keynesian economics? Well, it's because it's governing our everyday lives right now. And it's part of personal finance that everyone should completely understand. And, if you don't understand why the government is acting the way that it is, it's because some of the things that we've done in the past are because of John Keynes. And that's kind of incredible that someone 100 years ago nearly had changed everyone's life for the better, especially, after, especially during times like, during the Great Depression, or even during the 80s and the 70s, after, raising interest rates to combat inflation, you have that ability to decrease those rates, and then boom, you have a booming economy after that. So, I appreciate everyone watching. I hope you learned a little bit about, Keynesian economics and how the world kind of runs in general economically, just through these basic policies that were made nearly 100 years ago. So again, thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe and hit the like button for more content. Thank you.